Hello everyone and welcome back to the second episode of the Here Now community channel. Today we have our first guest joining from New York City. He is the best-selling author of Secret To Foolproof Presentations. His books are being featured on USA Today, Wallstreet Journal and Business Week. He's a master in public speaking and storytelling who trained people such as presidents, prime ministers, Nobel Prize winners, senators and many corporations around the world. With this, I would like to introduce to you Mr. TJ Walker. Welcome to our show, TJ.
Dragos, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
How are you these days? How are things going for you?
Fantastic, because there's never been a better time to be a speaker, in my view, because everyone's at home during the lockdown, and they have more time than ever to watch or listen to people speaking on the internet if they have something interesting to say. So I've been busier than ever making online courses, doing podcast interviews, and giving keynote speeches through things like Zoom.
I mean, you already have a course in Udemy, and I remember I also purchased it. I haven't finished it yet, though. The one on storytelling, the complete storytelling course for speaking and presenting.
Yes, and I do have, as a special gift to your listeners, I have a couple hundred free passes to that course and a discount for all of your other listeners, too. So if they stay tuned or go into your notes, they'll get a pass to that course.
That's amazing, because I also when I started it, for example, I got so many useful tips from you, especially that the way you put it is so natural and so, accessible to everyone that public speaking doesn't become a drag, but it becomes something like really comfortable and really easygoing and really normal in a way to do.
I appreciate the kind comments, but can you tell me, what do you remember from it? Any stories stand out from the course?
I remember when you, for example, emphasized very much on the fact that each one of us has a story, and the story can begin from little things. And each little thing, for example, can, no matter how, let's say, boring it may be for you, or how, let's say, little meaning may have for you, but it may have more meaning for others. It may bring more meaning for others. And the way we put it, again, that's, in a way, I think, key for the speaking.
Great. Well, I'm glad that sunk in, because what I did right there is something I recommend to all of my students in my storytelling class. And here's the deal. Anytime you speak, even if you've given a horrible speech, someone's going to come up to you afterwards and say, "Oh, good speech today, good presentation." And maybe it was good, but maybe they just wanted to make you feel good, or maybe they felt sorry for you. Most people just say, "Oh, thanks a lot." Complete wasted opportunity. You always want to ask people, first of all, say thank you, but then say, "Tell me, what do you remember? Any stories stand out? How would you summarize this to a colleague who wasn't here today?" I do that all the time. And if someone says to me, "Well, TJ, you were just so compelling and charismatic and dynamic, you're a real pro," if that's what they say to me, then I know my speech was a complete, utter failure. If all they can do is talk about my style, it means I didn't actually communicate any messages important to them, any stories that really stuck. So people always ask me, how do you know what works with a speech or what stories are good? Just ask people. If they remembered your story and they remember the point you were trying to make, it worked. If they don't remember your story, then you have evidence it didn't work. Now, the biggest problem most people have is they forgot to put any stories in, because they'll say, "Well, teacher, I'd love to tell stories, but there's no time because I got to go through all the data." Complete waste of time. If it's important enough to mention a data point, then you need to have a story to make it come alive. If you don't have time for the story, then you really shouldn't spend any time going over that fact or number or data point.
Right. I remember, because this, for example, was something that I had to deal with. So for the fact that I had many stories to tell, but then I had to go back and think about it and gather all that data. And I was like, okay, how am I going to put this data so it makes sense? So it's, it's a story that people would like, or people would be enchanted by, I don't know. And this basically I saw in your course, and it break through those chains. It allowed me, to, first of all, as you even put it, I think in the yesterday's video, you had a video on LinkedIn on I Hate My Boss, the one, the habit series, basically.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where you said when you're opening a business, like in this case, for example, when you're speaking in public or when you're telling a story, create a story or generate it from the past, fail at saying it, and then try again.
Sure. People think that, oh, I'm not a natural born speaker. Well, there's no such thing as a natural born speaker. I've never yet met a natural born writer. It doesn't matter if you're J.K. Rowling or William Shakespeare. Every great writer went to school for years and years. These days, people go to school for 12, 16, 20 years getting formal instruction and feedback on how to write effectively. No one just says, I'm not going to go to first grade, I'm a natural born writer.
Yeah.
And yet people don't get trained, they don't get feedback on how to tell stories, how to present, how to speak. So they tell themselves they don't know how to do it. Well, of course you don't know if you're not trained. If you toss car keys to the average 10-year-old and say, drive to the grocery store, it would be scary and intimidating.
Yeah.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
But if you throw car keys to someone who's gone through a basic driver's education class and has been driving for a few years, they can do it without even thinking about it. It's so easy. It's really the same thing when it comes to storytelling and speaking and presenting.
Would it be fair to say that storytelling requires more presence from us in our lives in order to, let's say, be better storytellers or be better speakers?
Actually, no. I think the sheer act of telling a story gives someone better presence. Here's something I do all the time in my training workshops. In fact, I was flying into Amsterdam not that long ago because I was training some officials at The Hague, and they stood up to give their formal presentation, and they were stiff and boring and flat, and their hands were frozen, and they were kind of monotone. And I recorded that. And then I had him sit down. I said, well, just tell me, Jacques, what is it you really want people to know about this? And all of a sudden, he starts telling me a story about how this particular public policy issue was really affecting people. And his eyes lit up. His hands moved. There was animation in his voice. He was bringing in characters, telling dialogue. It made him really interesting. What I have found is all human beings, when they are comfortable, tell stories. When they're comfortable with another human being and they're talking one-on-one or a small group, everybody tells stories. Everybody is a natural-born storyteller. If you get run off the road by a crazy driver and you barely make it home alive, you're going to have a story to tell your family or your roommate.
Absolutely.
And no one has a problem doing that. It's only when we tell ourselves, I'm now giving a formal presentation, that we strip away all of our natural storytelling ability. So, no, people think it's harder to tell a story in a so-called serious business presentation or talk. It's actually easier. It's easier for you. It's also easier for the audience because it's so much more interesting. So when I'm recording my clients, I'll record them giving their speech on video, but then I record them telling a story without them knowing it. I don't tell them I'm recording it. And then we watch their speech, and I ask them, which do they prefer? I was once in, not too far away from your native lands, I was in Slovenia training the prime minister. And I was in a remote former dictator's palace, and I was
Eastern European.
I was with the prime minister, and this was, after the fall of communism.
Yeah.
And it was a democratically elected prime minister. So I'm with the prime minister, and all of his bodyguards with machine guns are around me. And he says, TJ, do you mind if I practice my speech in my native language? I said, sure, go ahead. He stands up, his head is down, he's reading, it's monotonous, it's boring, I'm recording it. He finishes, and we watch it. He says, okay, TJ, tell me, what do you think? And the truth was, I thought it was so awful and boring, I wanted to fall asleep. But I also, it's my first time in that part of Eastern Europe, a little concerned because I didn't want to tell him I thought he was boring as all get out because I don't know where the embassy is. I'm surrounded by machine guns. But I finally decided, he's paying me a bunch of money to come give him feedback. I'll give it to him. And I said, Mr. Prime Minister, with all due respect, I don't know what you said, but you bored the heck out of me. His eyes got big. He looked at me. He looked at the guys with the machine guns. He looked at the screen. He paused for a second. I'm getting a little nervous. But then he turned back to me and said, "You're right. It's boring as heck." And with that, he took the speech, crumpled it up, threw it on the ground, and we started over. I said, okay, let's get out a fresh pad and pen. Now, let's think of just the top 5 messages you want to communicate to your audience. And now let's have one story that illustrates each point. And we only spent about 20 minutes on this. He then stood up, working from a single sheet of notes, talked to me like a human being, told stories. I recorded it. We watched it. As soon as we were done watching it, he jumps up, starts crying, says, "DJ, you're a genius. It's fantastic." I said, "Well, thank you, but there's no genius of mine. It's just you telling stories. It's interesting. It's more interesting to you. It's interesting for us."
Right. And more
that
natural.
really is an experience I find that happens with pretty much everyone I work with, is when they actually see themselves communicating and illustrating points with stories, they like it. It's easier for them. It's more fun for them. It's more fun, interesting for the audience. The first thing I ask every single time I'm with a group of people when I'm doing public speaking and storytelling workshops is, tell me about the best speaker you've seen, and now tell me every message point you remember from that speaker. And I'll go around the room. Jim, who can you think of? DJ, I can't remember anything. Everyone's boring in my industry. Ragosh, who can you think of? Well, I saw Brian Tracy. Well, no, I'm not talking about a professional speaker. I'm talking about someone in your industry, in your field, talking, or not a comedian. We'll go around the room, and a lot of people can't remember a single message point. Others remember 1 point or 2 points or 3 points, occasionally 4. Once every 6 months, someone will remember 5 points from a speech. I've never had anyone remember more than 5 points. Now, when I ask people what they do remember, they remember the stories that speakers say. That's what people remember. So I'm a big fan of storytelling, not because I'm a frustrated theater actor type and it's fun and I'm extra creative. I like stories simply because I don't know anything else that actually works when you're giving a speech or presentation. There's nothing more effective to get your ideas to stick into people's brains. That's the beauty of telling a story.
I was wondering, how did you basically get into storytelling or public speaking? And what was a trigger, for example, maybe from childhood or maybe in your teenage years? What triggered you about stories and storytelling?
I was a really shy kid. I was the kid who never said anything. I was the quietest kid in class. And I was about to graduate from 6th grade. My teacher came up to me one day and said, "Timmy," that's what I went by back then. My name is Timothy John. That's the TJ. She said, "Right now you've got all A's, all good grades and subjects, but your handwriting is terrible. You're going to get a C, a bad grade in handwriting. But I'll make a deal with you." She was in charge of the graduation ceremony for my 6th grade. And she said, "If you give the welcoming speech at graduation, I'll give you an A in handwriting."
Wow, that's a good
deal. And I thought about it. I thought, I don't really like public speaking, and I'm shy, but that sounds like a good deal because I like getting A's. So I said, "Sure, I'll do it." So I stood up. "Hello, parents, teachers, and students at Bruns Avenue Elementary School. Welcome to our graduate." I mean, it was a boring, nothing memorable or interesting speech. But it taught me at an early age, if you're just willing to stand up and speak, good things will happen to you. People will give you things. And I've been able to make a career, and a pretty nice career, out of speaking all over the world and helping other people speak. The beauty of it is you don't have to be great every time as long as you're learning. In fact, sometimes it's the bad presentations where you can learn a lot. I'll never forget my worst speech, my worst presentation ever was 25 years ago. I was down in Florida on a talk radio show being interviewed. It was a political season. I had said something nice about the incumbent U.S. president at the moment, and my interviewer, the talk show host, didn't like that. He was extreme right wing, and he didn't like me saying something nice about this president. And he was very intimidating because his chair was much higher. He was looking down at me. He was about 2 feet above me. I was on this tiny little chair that seemed like a chair for a first grader. I'm looking up at him, and he says, "Mr. Walker, I have more respect for a Klansman than I do for you." And I looked shocked. I hadn't said anything that provocative. And I'm arguing back with him. Next thing I know, he's taking the microphone out of my hand. "You shouldn't speak, Mr. Walker. Just shut your mouth." He's pulling the microphone out of my hand. And I'm thinking, well, I'm already a seasoned political communicator at this point. I'd been a political consultant. I'm not going to let him do that. So I'm pulling the microphone back. I'm pulling it back. Yeah. But Mr. Kane, what I really think, before I could say anything else, he reaches under the console of the talk radio studio, pulls out a gun.
No way.
Points it. "Now do you see my point, Mr. Walker?" Do you know what I said at that moment? Not much of it.
Yes, yeah.
It was not my finest moment. And I barely got out of there. I did not get shot. Nothing bad happened.
I'm glad to hear that.
But it was a little bit embarrassing, humiliating. I actually had friends who were listening to it that day, recorded it, and were nice enough to play that recording back to me every time I saw them for the next 10 years.
My God.
But you know what I learned is you can't let one interview bother you. In fact, I went back to that station 2 weeks later and guest hosted another show. In fact, I went back to that station many times as a guest host. Even though that one interview was awful, I realized I have a passion for helping people communicate and communicating in the media. And I'm going to do it. I'm not going to let one bad opportunity slow me down.
Right.
And as long as you're learning, as long as you're having fun, then you can do well and help other people. So that's how I got started.
Well, that's quite a story. And again, you see, this is a story that has so much meaning and can get so much out of it. And you put it so naturally in front and with, I would say, very little effort, But
here's the thing about stories is you don't have to memorize anything. You just relive it. That actually happened to me. I'm not making it up. Now, when you're telling stories about what you do and what's important to you or the latest consumer product that in your company, you don't have to be as dramatic as someone pointing a gun at you. In this case, it did happen to me. But you don't have to have anything that dramatic. All you need in a story is something that happened. You introduce a character, and that's just a human being you've talked to, a person, a family member, a colleague, a client, a customer. What did they say to you? What was the problem? What did you say back? How was it resolved? How did you solve the situation? And how did you feel about it? That's all a story is. All of us tell stories all day long, and it's easy to do. I mean, I appreciate you telling me that it came across naturally, but again, it's just me reliving an experience. It's easy for me. Now, I've obviously said that before, but I haven't said it in probably 6 months, but I didn't have to go prep and stay up at practice in a mirror till midnight getting ready for this show. Just as easy to share. All of us have experiences that we can share in life to help make a point.
Right. I wanted to ask you also, because I think you might have mentioned this already, but I want to try see if there's anything else. What was the hardest part, basically, of your career, basically growing as a public speaker and storyteller?
Well,
Aside from the gun part.
from the hindsight of being here now in 2020, the hard part was there was no internet.
Oh,
You
yeah.
couldn't just make an online course. Everything was much slower, and things were much more traditional. I graduated from college in 1985, went to work for a PR firm in New York City and made the princely sum of $5 an hour. Then I went and managed political campaigns and became a press secretary working for a politician in Florida, did that for several years, and then hosted political talk radio shows and TV shows, syndicated TV shows. But you couldn't podcast back then. You had to knock on doors, beg TV stations and radio stations, practically kill yourself to get advertisers.
Right.
There were so many roadblocks. There were so many gatekeepers. So you're constantly having to deal with these gatekeepers, and it only takes one. You can have a good show, you can be on broadcast stations on a lot of markets, but it only takes one gatekeeper, an advertiser, saying, no, I'm not going to sponsor you. And you lost 2 years of your life and you starved to death. So that
Right.
was the hard part for me early in my career. So I'm very excited and happy about being alive and active in 2020, but I would be pinching myself with glee if I were 20 years old or 25 years old starting out now, because in so many ways, it's much easier. You can come up with a concept
It is.
of a podcast, for example, try it, put everything into it, invest time, but not have to invest much money at all, and see if it works. And after 2 or 3 months, you may decide, I don't want to do it anymore. You haven't lost anything. In the old days when I was coming up, I would spend a whole year doing a syndicated talk radio show, for example. And I did sometimes spend 2.5 years trying to build and develop a TV show. Now you can just start a YouTube channel, and maybe it takes off after 6 months, maybe it doesn't, but you're not spending all of your time chasing advertisers and knocking on station managers' doors to just get on the air. Anyone can be on the air today, right now, through the internet. So that's what I think is so exciting about living today in the world, because there's obviously a lot of bad news. We have pandemics going on. We have massive income inequality. There's racism, sexism.
Yeah.
There is more and more of the spoils going to the elite of every organization. So I'm not saying everything is great, but if you are someone who is willing to experiment, who's willing to create, who's willing to try things and put your energy into it, it's never been easier to take an idea, create it, and put it in some form, whether it's a podcast, a blog, an ebook, an online course, a YouTube channel, and distribute it to the whole world, possibly reaching a large audience, possibly making some money or even a lot of money. That's unique. That is different. That has not happened in the history of the world until right now. And that's what I think is exciting for a lot of people, especially if they're a little younger than I am.
How, for example, how did you prepare? How did you prepare for, in your past, for example, I believe you had some best practices that you were following in order to get to this kind of syndications and have this kind of chats, this kind of conversation on radio and TV. I believe you were preparing quite a lot for that, especially in the past. And as you say, for example, now it may be easier, as we have more access to information, everything seems to be much easier to attain. I'm asking this question because, for example, in the past, I attended also 3 times a conference back home with a TED-like setup. And the first time it was when I was 18, the second time was when I was, I think, 20, and then when I was 23 or something like this. And each time I was invited, first of all, I had absolutely no clue why I was invited, and I had no clue how these people kind of knew about me, which was pretty interesting at that time. And each time I remember I was spending so much time repeating that script that I was so unsure about. And in that script, I was telling stories. I was trying to tell stories, and I was trying to learn that story by heart. And that, in a way, it became so boring to me even. But then I had nothing else,
Yeah.
And
A couple of suggestions I have for you and
Right.
all your listeners to save time and be better when you're speaking and presenting. Well, first of all, I'm glad you said yes to the speaking opportunities. Never say no to a speaking opportunity unless it would cause you to lose so much money that
Yes.
it would be harmful to your business model. There's so many good things that can happen to anyone if they give a good speech or presentation. So I'm glad you said yes. When it comes to preparation, the best thing in the world to do is to narrow your presentation down to literally 5 points, each point being no longer than one sentence. Have it on a single sheet of paper. Have a story for each one. Write down a couple of words to remind you of the story. Have everything you need on a single sheet of paper, and then practice it out loud on video. Do not look at a mirror. Do not write your speech out word for word, unless you're running for prime minister or something like that.
That's what it felt like.
Do not memorize. When you memorize a speech, you are becoming an actor. And if it's one thing people all over the world are good at, is they know good acting when they see it. They know bad acting when they see it. And forgive my U.S. references, but here in the U.S., people have all seen Meryl Streep and Robert De Niro. So if I try to memorize something, I'm going to look fake and phony. So don't try to memorize a speech. It doesn't help. It's okay to use notes when you speak. I never speak without using notes, but no audience member is ever aware that I use notes because I have it on a single sheet of paper. I never touch it. I never pick it up. I have it in large font, so I don't have to put my glasses on or bend over it. And what you want to do is keep practicing on video until you love what you see. So a lot of times it drives me crazy. I hear other storytelling experts and public speaking experts saying, if possible, practice on video. Well, it's not 1972 anymore. It's possible for everyone to practice on video. If you have a cell phone,
Right.
an iPad, a laptop, you have a video camera. But here's the problem. If you practice on video once and look at it and pick it apart and have someone rip you apart, not only does that not help you, it will actually make you worse as a speaker. It can actually destroy your confidence. So I'm not suggesting you practice your speech on video once and look at it. That's not helpful. The real magic comes by practicing, looking at it, doing it again, trying to do more of what you like, less of what you don't like. And then you keep doing it until you can look at a video of yourself and say, wow, pretty good. If I can be half as good as that person, I would watch that. That's interesting. Once you've seen a video of yourself giving a speech with stories and you like it, it becomes virtually impossible for you to be nervous. The reason we're nervous is we're thinking, oh gosh, what if I'm really boring? What if I suck? What if I'm awful? Well, you might actually be boring. You might actually be awful.
Yeah.
So you might as well know it. In every other aspect of life, we typically want some accurate representation of how we're coming across. If you're going to the fanciest black tie ball in Amsterdam this Saturday night, and you're going with your partner or a spouse or something, you don't want to get dressed in the dark and just have your partner say, oh yeah, you don't have coffee all over your face, you don't have lipstick all over. Most people don't want to get dressed in the dark or rely on someone else. They want to be able to look in a mirror so they know that they've either shaven or put their makeup on, their hair's the way they want it, and nothing's sticking out funny. They want confirmation of how they are coming across to the world. If you're sending a resume to someone and a cover letter, typically you're going to run it through spell check first. You don't just send it and say, oh gosh, I hope I got everything right. You want to be able to read and look at that text on your computer screen or a piece of paper before you send it. Well, if you're giving a speech, the equivalent of being able to review it, spell check it, is you have to watch yourself on video. No, looking at a mirror is a complete waste of time. You'll obsess over the fact that your nose seems crooked. Don't ever practice looking in a mirror. Practice by speaking in front of a camera, ideally with a person or two, but if nothing else, just speak to the camera and then look at it. And people say, well, TJ, how many times does it take? How many minutes? How many hours? Is it 1 hour for every minute of speech? No. You need to do it as many times as it takes until you love what you see. Because you, Dragos, and everyone in your audience, you have a lifetime of experience of listening to bad, boring speakers, bad, boring teachers. You already know what you don't like.
That's true. So many.
Use that knowledge in your favor. So for some people, they may practice twice and say, oh, that's great. That's how I wanted to do it. For someone else, they may do it 100 times. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you are happy with how you're coming across before you subject it to the rest of the world. Not that long ago, I was training a billionaire CEO of a huge technology company out in California. And like I do with all my clients, I say, send me a video of yourself speaking before we get together. And just a short presentation, 2-3 minutes, but don't send it to me until you're happy with it. And he sent his video. I asked him, how many times did you practice it? This is a busy guy. He manages 10,000 employees around the world. He said, TJ, I practiced it 130 times before I was comfortable sending it to you.
Well,
but when he walked into the room with me, the first thing he said was, wow, TJ, I've already learned so much about this process. And I hadn't spent a second with him yet. You learn a lot about speaking, presenting, storytelling, and yourself if you're willing to practice on video. It costs nothing. When I started this way back in the 80s, you had to call a local TV station, find a local TV camera person. He would lug in this big, heavy 50-pound camera, hire an engineer to hook it up to a TV. It was complicated. It's not complicated anymore, folks. The only reason not to practice on video is you're lazy and insecure. And I understand that. Everyone has some level of insecurity. But remember, everyone else is going to see you speak anyway, so you might as well know. I always ask people, what would you rather do? You walked through Times Square naked. Would you want someone pumping you up? Everyone's laughing at you and pointing. Would you want someone to say, oh, no, good job, you're doing fine, everything looks fine? Or would you want someone to say, hey, TJ, put some clothes on, you're embarrassing yourself? I would want honest feedback. And you can get that from yourself these days. You want to know how you're coming across. And that's, by the way, the easiest way to get over nerves. People are nervous about public speaking and storytelling, and it's completely irrational. I'm very different from a lot of public speaking experts who say, oh, you'll be fine, and visualize a standing ovation, drink some green tea. I tell people, you should be nervous. You might really be awful. The solution is make sure in advance you are great by practicing on video. Again, back to the resume cover letter. You wouldn't just dictate a cover letter and tell a friend, oh, send this to this company I'm applying to. It's a really important job. There's nothing else in the world I'd love than to work at this company. But I don't really have time to spell check the cover letter or edit it or see if it's smudged or dirty. Just send it out as is. Would you ever do that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
and yet,
not.
That is what you're doing. That is what you're doing if you've ever given a speech or a presentation or a talk and you didn't rehearse on video in advance to look at it. Because if you're just saying it for the first time, it's your rough draft. It's your first draft, which we call a rough draft.
Right.
Rough drafts are rough because they're often not very good.
Yeah.
And we understand with everything else in life, we want to refine it, refine that report, edit that report, that story. But with speaking, somehow we think, oh, we should just get it perfect the first time. Doesn't work that way.
I also wanted to ask you, because you also have a personal life. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that, but I want to ask you something about, like, around that idea. I want to ask you, how did public speaking and storytelling inspire you in your personal life? What is, let's say, your personal learnings that you apply on a daily life outside your profession?
Well, I integrate my profession and my personal life. They connect. In recent years, I have gone from just helping people on public speaking skills and presentation skills to broader personal development issues. And it all comes from my background in public speaking, because for years, for decades, I've taught people how to influence audiences, politicians how to influence voters, CEOs how to influence shareholders. I've been in the influence game, teaching people how to influence audiences. And it occurred to me one day that the most important audience of all is yourself. So if you can channel your voice and your speaking to influence yourself, that would be the best thing of all. So I have dozens and dozens of online personal development courses at udemy.com that are on topics like personal productivity, goal setting, goal achievement, personal transformation, where I teach people to speak to themselves, where you just pick up your cell phone and talk to yourself about what you want your goals to be, what you want to do, what you want your daily habits to be. I call it a selfie speak program. Everyone's used to taking selfies of themselves and friends, pictures. This is recording your own voice, where you just talk to yourself. You're essentially advertising. So I listen to about a 15-minute talk. It's not a speech, it's me talking to myself every day, where I tell myself what habits I'm going to do every single day. So for example, I hate running, but I tell myself, TJ, you're going to run as fast as you can today and every day just for 60 seconds. So I hear myself telling myself that, and I do, in fact, for the last year, run 60 seconds every day on a treadmill. I also lift weights every day. Now, I only do it 5 sets, 8 reps, so it only takes about 4 minutes.
Right, yeah.
But tell myself, using my own voice, speaking, how I want to live my life, how I want to program myself, because all of us are subjected all day long through our cell phones, through TVs, through billboards, by major corporations and institutions speaking to us, trying to influence our behavior. Facebook is sending us messages all day long saying, give us your eyeballs because we want to sell them to advertisers. Amazon is communicating all day long saying, hey, you bought this yesterday, you're going to like this book here today.
Yeah, pretty much.
Netflix is communicating with us, hey, you like this movie, watch this movie. McDonald's, Coca-Cola, they're sending us images through billboards, ads, promotions, radio jingles, internet promotions saying, eat more garbage food and to fatten yourself up because we want your money. Coca-Cola saying, drink more sugar water. Never mind that it will make you obese and give you diabetes. We want your money. So all of us hear messages communicated to us, and such a high percentage of them are spoken through radio ads, TV ads, video ads, online audio ads, podcast ads. And so I'm not anti-advertising, but what I want to do is level the playing field. So I've taken my background as a speaker and a presentation trainer, and I'm now using that to help people influence the most important audience in their life, themselves. So that's what I do with a lot of my personal development courses. And your audience may want to check that out. If they just type my name in at udemy.com, they'll find hundreds of courses. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm going to give a free pass to some of your audience at a discount. The course, the complete storytelling course for speaking and present, is the #1 bestseller on Udemy for storytelling. Udemy is the #1 most popular online course platform in the world. The course is normally $199. Some of your audience will get this for free. Others will get it for between $10 and $12, so a very significant discount.
Definitely. Thank you so much, TJ, for that, for your generosity, of course, as well. I would like to wrap this conversation up with another question. Well, how do you deal, because you were talking about the influence that certain advertisements and certain corporations, let's say, have on our daily lives. How are you, let's say, who is basically aware of this kind of things, dealing with this? Because you said you're trying to teach people in a way to become a bit more, let's say, aware of these techniques. But how are you dealing with basically this influence type of advertisement that tries to make you buy a certain product? Yeah.
So again, I'm not anti-advertising, but I just want balance. So for me, one of the ways I deal with the persuasive influence of advertising and marketing in the world is I have very specific times of the day where I turn my cell phone off. So typically, I try to go for a walk each day at the end of the workday, which I try to end at 4 p.m. each day. Mm-hmm. I do not take my cell phone with me. It's not that I turn it on vibrator or turn off the ringer. I literally turn the phone off, leave it at home. That way I can actually think and reflect. Few people do that in the world. People check their phones every 2 seconds. And people are checking their emails hundreds of times a day. Because of that, you can never actually think up your own thoughts. You can never reflect. That's a big problem. So I carve out very specific times. I also try to do what the Georgetown professor Cal Newport calls deep work. I try to carve out deep work time each day where I'm making videos for new online courses or I'm writing scripts. And again, I turn off my cell phone. I will literally pull the plug out of my computer many times so I'm not tempted to get messages from the internet. Now, I realize not everyone can do that, but you can do it for part of your day. Another thing which is great for sleep and great for health is never, ever, ever let your cell phone in the bedroom. People, that's crazy. I would die without my cell phone. Well, people got along without cell phones in their bedroom for 200,000 years. You do not need your cell phone in your bedroom.
Right.
Because it's very disruptive to sleep patterns. And I also am very conscious of turning my cell phone off 1 hour before I'm going to bed. That way I can focus on reading important works I'm trying to read, and the books are not full of advertising. I also put a strict time limit of how much news I consume in the morning. I try to limit my news consumption to 30 minutes so that I can then shift over to reading actual books, listening to audiobooks, reading book summaries, where I'm going deep into substance, where I'm not being bombarded with ads. And the other thing, I did this 4 years ago after a certain person who I won't want to mention was elected here in the United States at a high-level position. I said to myself, I cannot look at this person's face ever again. And at that point, I made the decision to not watch any television news and no cable news. So that saves a lot of, because I used to be a news junkie and I was a TV talk show host. So it was easy for me to get sucked up into watching TV news for 2-3 hours a night. So I went cold turkey and have not watched any cable television news in 4 years. So that drastically eliminates how many news and marketing messages can bombard me, and that gives me more opportunity to influence myself. So I can focus on what I want. My goals are, I want to read all or part of a paper book every day and all of a book summary every day and listen to all of an audio summary book every single day. Part of my agenda, first thing in the morning, is I write 500 words a day at least on habits. Is every single day brilliant? No, but there's enough good stuff every so often that it makes it worthwhile. And I write by dictating, so I'm just talking to my cell phone, but I'm not checking emails, I'm not responding to messages, anything like that. And I always keep my ringer off.
Right.
And if I'm in a situation like this where I'm doing an interview, I have an iPhone, as I don't mean this to sound like an advertisement, but I have put the do not disturb and the theater mode for my cell phone. So if someone called me during this interview, I wouldn't be distracted because I want to focus just on you and your audience. So those are some of the things I do. And as you mentioned, you were gracious enough to mention earlier, every single day, 7 days a week, even if I'm on vacation, I create a 45 to 60 second video where I talk about a habit each day. And I'm glad you watched it, but frankly, I do it for me because the sheer act of knowing that I have to make a video each day giving a tip on a habit forces me to push through all the other marketing news and nonsense and celebrity tittle-tattle and to really look for more information about how to form good habits and to think about good tips and insights that are unique as well. So it's a great discipline. I'm glad you're in the discipline now of creating podcasts. But I think everyone should get into the habit of creating some content they share with the world. It could be comedy. It could be an uplifting quote of the day that you come up with. It could be a how-to manual on how to run your hospital more effectively. But if you're a human being and you have average intelligence or above, I think it's frankly almost criminal that you're not creating content on a daily basis.
Right.
Blog, tweet, post it on a Facebook page, make an audio, make a video. I'm agnostic on what platform you use or what mode, but create something because it's good for your brain, it's good for your brand, it's good for your business, it's good for your short-term and long-term reputation. And I just find it fuels creativity and opens you up to all sorts of opportunities. Hence, you finding me and calling me up. So thank you.
And especially during these times, like we're basically locked in and have to, let's say, deal with ourselves a little bit more than usual.
Yeah, and here's the thing about creating content, especially video. Video scares people and intimidates people. It's actually easier and less time-consuming to do a video 7 days a week than it is to do one a month.
Yeah.
I guarantee you'll spend more time making one video a month than if you just did it every day. Now, there's different levels of quality. I'm not comparing myself to people who have really slickly produced, researched, edited, special effects, 10-minute videos on YouTube and are generating 20 million views.
Right.
Mine are simple talking head videos, which I then distribute to a dozen platforms. But here's the thing. I come up with the idea when I'm in the shower. I record the video in one take. So it takes me less than a minute to record it. I then come up with a title in about 5 seconds, and then I cut and paste and upload to a dozen places. So the whole thing is less than 10 minutes a day. And it's a way for me to speak, number one. If I'm going to teach people how to speak, I should be speaking daily. It's also a way for me to connect with students, prospects, customers, clients. It's a way for me to keep my own brain sharp. I hear some people who are professional speakers say, "Oh gosh, there's coronavirus. I can't speak anymore on the stage. Isn't this awful? My career's over." And I want to say, be a little bit flexible. There's never been a time easier to speak. Maybe you're not on a platform in front of 200 people, but maybe you're speaking to 50,000 people if they watch your video or listen to your audio. If you do it well enough or say something interesting or do it repeatedly. I mean, I don't have a YouTube channel with 10 billion views, but if you look at all the views I get across all platforms in a month, it's sometimes over 100,000, sometimes a little under. Again, that's not an audience big enough that I can make billions from advertising,
right?
But it is enough to help me grow a brand, have fun, frankly, feel like I'm not talking to myself, and to promote my online courses, books, and everything else. And there's nothing stopping anyone else.
To help others.
When I had to get, when I had to talk at the ABC affiliate in Tampa, Florida, to air my TV show 30 years ago, that was hard. And I had to show up with a suit and tie and show them my credentials and all these other things. That's hard. No one has to do that anymore. Just make the content, put it out there, and try to engage with people.
DJ, you're amazing. And really appreciate that you took the time today to have such an inspiring chat together.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time. Good luck in the whole podcast journey.
Thank you.
Good luck to your audience.
Thank you. And it was...
I hope your stories in life propel your career and take you to new heights.
Thank you so much. I hope that as well. And I have a lot of, let's say, advice here that I also took note of. I will share it also in the description with the audience. The 5 basically highlights of the conversation. Again, perhaps you can agree on this as well, as it is tremendously important to have these skills in the nowadays world, in order to reveal our authentic selves. Storytelling does that.
There is no skill more important than communication for success in business and in life. And there's no one specialized aspect of communication as important as storytelling. Right. So the sooner you master it and get great at it, the more it's going to help every part of your life. Thank you.
I'm glad that I got to know a bit more about you and see how you're inspiring other people like me grow for the better. Thank you again. And ladies and gentlemen, TJ is currently teaching the complete storytelling course for speaking and presenting on Udemy. He has also other courses on self-development. Most of them are in the best-selling section of Udemy and #1 most popular online course marketplace. His desire is to be able to offer his many years of experience in the field to people such as you and me through his course. I will share the link of the course with you in the description. Attached to the link, there is a coupon that gives you a discount from the normal price of $199. As well as TJ mentioned, there is going to be also some free passes to the courses. I will add that in the section as well. If you have any questions for him or would you like to inquire his passions and work, feel free to contact him on LinkedIn or his personal website at tjwalker.com. I'll put everything in the description of the episode as well, so feel free to check that out. DJ, thank you once again for joining us on this beautiful journey.
Thanks for having me.
And with this, we will wrap up. This was your host, Dragos. Thank you for tuning in today. Next time, we will be talking to a guest who is a Dutch local. He's a sinologist, aka Chinese interpreter, and teacher with an inspiring story behind. Stay tuned, and if you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to give us a feedback, subscribe, and follow. Until next time, goodbye.